What's going on, guys? Prepper School, Volume 16. We're going to be talking about something really fun today. Really fun. Surviving nuclear fallout. We're going to try to hit it. I mean, there is so much information to put out here. We're just going to try to hit a lot of the hot spots. We will be taking some questions. This is an ongoing thing. It's something that, honestly, I've been planning for a while. But with current world events, I think it's a very important time to at least start talking about the basics.
Kind of ratcheted things up a little bit.
Yeah.
Back to 1981.
I think the one thing, though, guys, is to remember that surviving nuclear fallout, your chances of survival are really high.
Yep.
And so it's not something to completely freak out about, even in the event that things do ratchet up. But it's one of those things, if you know certain things to do. And that's really what we're going to talk about today. We are going to talk about a little bit of longer term kind of things, but it's really mainly getting safe. Because if you can get if you can take the right actions immediately, unless you are in the blast zone, if you're in the detonation area, it's going to be quick.
It's not going to matter.
It ain't going to matter. But we're really talking about areas on out past. And so today we have Robbie Wheaton with us, of course. And Robbie actually in the Marine Corps did some schools. There were some classes you took on nuclear.
I did. I actually went to the NBC, Nuclear Biological Chemical, a school that they had for first responders, immediate response, fast action team to respond to any type of nuclear, biological, or chemical attack worldwide. We were a fast jump off team that were within 24 hours of any type of event happening. We could be on site and assessing and assisting with any kind of disaster like that.
And so also Robbie has WheatonArms.com, which they do great Glock aftermarket parts. I mean, incredible flat face triggers, the best on the market. Also custom gun work, been a gunsmith for over 20 years. But also has a YouTube channel that he's really started posting really great videos over there. You can look up Robbie Wheaton or WheatonArms.com.
That's right.
And so the 10 things you need to know about buying whatever firearm.
That's right. Top 10 things you need to know about a firearm before you buy it.
So it's a great resource. So check out Wheaton Arms and check out the YouTube channel as well. And we also appreciate Sarah Mack. She will be taking questions. And so if you have some questions that you're concerned about, you can go ahead and put them in there. They may be on the list further down, but we're going to try to answer some questions as well. We have a long list today.
Yeah, odds are we probably won't get through the list today.
No,
this will have to be a to be continued episode.
Yeah, we'll probably go more in depth. Also, we appreciate Sportsman Guide for sponsoring today's episode. They do offer a $20 off every $100 or more purchase site-wide. I think ammunition is not included, but it's use the. I'm tongue-tied. We have been working on this thing like crazy for the past few days.
Yep.
But use Sootch in the coupon code #00, and you get $20 off every $100 or more purchase.
And make sure you check out the Buyers Club as well. The Buyers Club, you get additional savings as well as free shipping on the majority of their items, including mop suits, which we'll talk about later.
Right. And that's the one thing. They do have supplies and things over there, a lot of surplus gear and military surplus, plus a lot of other things. So anyway, check them out. We really appreciate them. Okay. Big thing. I mean, a big subject to tackle. One of the things about a nuclear explosion, I mean, there are different types. One of the things that can happen, of course, initially is the burst. And it can be militarily, typically above ground is the best.
Right.
Because it creates that fireball. That's what they did at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But a ground burst, like let's say they're hitting missile silos, they're trying to get into the dirt. The dirt is brought up and the debris becomes radioactive. And that's what we're going to talk about. Once it rises up into the atmosphere, according to how the winds blow, they can blow radioactive fallout directly to you or to certain areas. And those are the areas, though, that are highly survivable. Now, one of the things about Nagasaki and Hiroshima back in 1945, if you look at those cities today, they are incredibly modern, beautiful cities.
That's right.
So, a lot of times when you watch movies and things, it's like when there's a nuclear detonation or whatever, it's 1,000 years, before there's, but that's just not the case. Now, maybe at ground zero, there may be some issues there.
Yeah.
but around the area, it is again survivable. In fact, in Nagasaki, 67% of the population, no, it was more than that. Hold on. I think we wrote it down. 76% of the population survived that were in the area of Nagasaki. Hiroshima, it was 71%. So again, now bombs are a lot more lethal. They're bigger. They are. Some of the bombs that are coming out right now, especially in Russia, that they've designed are 100,000 times bigger.
Yeah, these were like a firecracker compared to a stick of dynamite. When you're looking at comparison contrast between the bombs that we detonated in Hiroshima and Nagasaki compared to the thermobaric bombs that we have today.
But it's only still about a 30% increase in blast radius, the initial blast. So really, again, even though the bomb can be bigger, the kill zone is a lot larger. The fallout is what we're really looking at, and that's one of the biggest things. So yeah, there are bigger bombs today, but we have seen, and then Chernobyl. We know about Chernobyl. That was a meltdown. One of the things that we have been talking about lately is we have nuclear power plants all around us.
Yep.
And there is a 50-mile radius outside of a nuclear power plant. If the power is shut down and there's no way to keep those isotopes cold or cool, you have a 50-mile radius that, you need to be concerned about. And that's just another part of it.
Yep.
But that's not really what we're going to be talking about today. Now, this is the mantra by the U.S. government, by FEMA, by whoever, these emergency disaster reliefs, is get inside, stay inside, and stay tuned. And these are things that you need to consider. First off is if you are caught in a blast, number one, if you see a blast, if you see it, don't stand there and look at it. Don't walk up to a window and go, "What was that?" When there is a nuclear blast, get behind a barrier immediately. Because one of the things about a nuclear blast is that initial explosion, and then there's this shockwave. And the shockwave is like a hurricane.
That's right.
I mean, it worse, much worse. It just explodes buildings. It cuts them down, even outside of the original blast.
Yes, average wind speed is about 600 miles per hour.
Right.
And that will flatten pretty much any building, any skyscraper. 600-mile-an-hour winds are no joke. You're a category 5 hurricane is 200 plus miles per hour. And if you've ever been involved with a hurricane or seen the aftermath of a hurricane, it is absolutely devastating. And that's only 200-mile-an-hour winds. So you multiply that by 3, and you can just imagine the devastation that you'll get from 600 plus mile per hour winds.
Right. And one of the things that happened, there was a man and there were actually 165 people that were in Hiroshima when the first bomb went off, survived it, got to Nagasaki 3 days later and survived that. 165 people that actually were in both bombs. But there was one man that was traveling for business. He was heading to Hiroshima. And when the blast went off, he got out of his car, got down into a ditch. And they said when the blast came, it picked him up like 15 feet and threw him against the ground. Now, he had burns. He was blind for a little while. And then he was treated, went to Nagasaki, and was actually in a building and got into the stairwell, concrete stairwell, and survived it. Survived both, lived to be a very old man. So, again, it's get inside, stay inside. Now, let's talk about staying inside. Getting inside, first off, is you have about 15 minutes. According to authorities, you have about 15 minutes. You need to hightail it, get into a shelter. The best place is a concrete barrier, but really the best place is underground.
Underground, yep.
You got ground, you got dirt packed. The big thing you're concerned about after the shockwave is the debris that goes up into the atmosphere. It starts to fall, and it's radioactive. It will lose 50% of its radioactivity before it even hits the ground. Once it hits the ground, after 24 hours, it loses 80% of its radioactivity. And then by 48 hours, it goes down to 99%
That's right.
of its radioactivity. Now, after that, you don't go out and play in the dirt because.
And that's with certain radioactive isotopes. There's still some others that continue to be irradiated for days or weeks or months or even up to like 30 years as the half-life on some of the radioactive isotopes.
Right. Right. So, but that dust and that debris is what you want to get away from.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things, glass or car is not a good place to be.
No.
A car will not protect you from radiation. Glass, if you're standing up by a glass, that's not going to protect you from radiation. One thing, though, that's simple is to take plastic sheeting and put over your glass. It has a really hard time coming through plastic sheeting. But really, the main thing is concrete barriers, packed dirt, steel, and lead. A lot of times, when you're in X-ray, going to X-rays, they'll do it with a lead.
They shield certain parts of your body. That's exactly right. And the part of the radiation that you really have to worry about are the gamma rays. The gamma rays are generally the ones that they penetrate the most. Like gamma rays can penetrate like 3.3 feet of dirt, 2.5 feet of concrete, 22 feet of snow. Just some odd numbers that stuck in my head from years past. But it will penetrate about 8 inches of solid steel. The gamma rays will. So having barriers, thick barriers in between you. A wood house probably not going to help you out a whole lot with gamma rays. It's not going to be much different than being in your car. Having dirt or thick concrete in between you and the radioactive fallout, which has the majority of your gamma rays in it, that's what's going to help protect you and save you.
Right. So, but again, just being inside any shelter is going to give you some protection from at least the fallout.
Absolutely.
So, sometimes you just have to do what you can do. One of the big things, if you live in an urban area, if you're outside of the blast or you're close to where the fallout is to get into a subway, get into a basement. I mean, there are fallout shelters that they've kind of closed down. I think Clinton closed down most of those.
They did. A lot of your fallout shelters have been closed down, but this is one of those areas in our lifetime where a lot of those fallout shelters, especially in your urban areas, could very realistically be reopened. So check around in your cities where you live, in your large urban areas, and find out where your fallout shelters are. Know how long it's going to take you to get there from wherever you are in the city, and know multiple different routes to be able to get to those fallout shelters. Right.
So getting there. Now, one thing too is if you're outside and something happens and you can find shelter, you have about 15 minutes, and that's according to how far you are from the area.
Right.
But you get to that place, the best thing to do is to remove your outer clothing and do it slowly. Don't just rip it off, because you have radioactive particles on you. So you want to remove your clothing slowly, take it, put it in a plastic bag if you can, and then take it and put it far away from you. Then you need to wash off with water, whatever you can, any exposed areas especially. Even if it's just with a wet towel, you need to wipe off all the areas that you have. And your hair follicles actually attract radiation. So it's probably a good idea to go ahead and just shave that head. And that was one thing. One thing you don't want to do is use conditioner. Conditioner actually attracts radioactive particles. So, get clean, get washed, get into a center area of a structure. So if you're in a concrete structure, you have better chances, but get in the center, like a stairwell would be a great place. But you're going to need to stay there for 48 hours.
Minimum.
Minimum. So, that is one thing about it. Now, I mean, there are a lot of things that you can do, you can purchase, you can buy. One of the things that we've got a lot of stuff, and we're not going to get into this yet too much, but I found one of these on eBay. It's just, these are just fun. And man, I grew up during all this stuff.
Well, we both did.
Yeah. So, I mean, the old Geiger counters, you see these. That's one of the things that, there's a lot of stuff, but there's a lot of things out there that you can purchase on Amazon, which, here's a small little Geiger counter. It's fairly inexpensive. You can get on Amazon. I will say this right now, guys, with this threat, this stuff's going to go away.
It will,
in a big hurry.
Especially once the mainstream media really starts talking about it and pushing it. It's going to be like gas last year when we had the cyber attack on the gas pipeline, and we kind of knew a few days ahead of time that things were going to happen. We were able to get plenty of gas, and we're good to go. It's going to be the same way with this. Once the mainstream media really grabs hold of this and starts talking about it, it's going to shock people. People are going to be afraid, and stuff like this is either going to disappear or the prices are going to go through the roof.
It's like I always say, guys, when it's under the radar like this is when you need to prepare. When it starts to do this, it's too late. You got to get ahead of the curve. But we're not going to get to that yet. But we will talk about one thing that is vital to have, and that's potassium iodide.
Iodine.
Not iodine. Iodide.
Okay.
In fact, don't get iodine. It's iodide, and it's Ki. And this is potassium iodide. What this does is your thyroid attracts radiation. If you get radiation in your body, it will immediately go to your thyroid. This fills your thyroid with potassium iodide. And so that way it keeps the radiation. Now, there can be some that can get there, but one of these pills, the first 24 hours, and it'll last about 24 hours. Taking 2 doesn't help you anymore. 1 is all you need. There are some instructions on here if you have infants or you're pregnant or, you're having an allergy to potassium iodide or potassium. But this is one of the things that is important to get. And it's fairly inexpensive typically. I got these on Amazon and we got extras because, we have them for the family. We have them for those that are around us. So potassium iodide, Ki, that's a very important thing to get that can really kind of save you up front, and it's not super expensive.
Yep. And there's 3 different types of radiation, and the potassium iodide only protects you from one, and that's the one that attacks your thyroid. The other 2 types of radiation, there are no medical treatments or any kind of medicine or anything that you can take for those. So you can protect yourself from one and protect your thyroid, which is going to prevent you from getting cancer long-term or dying from radiation sickness from the type of radiation that the potassium iodide protects you from. But there are still 2 other types of radiation that can penetrate your body that the potassium iodide won't help you with.
Now, that saying, there is the National Institute of Health. They came out with this study and it was actually done in Chernobyl after the Chernobyl incident. There were a lot of kids that got really sick. One of the things, and this was kind of surprising, that they used was apple juice. Apple juice has pectin, and pectin will flush out any radiation. They did these studies. They even did placebo studies. Yeah. So you have a huge increase in getting rid of the radiation from pectin or from just apple juice, eating apples. And it was more effective than other kinds of foods. I mean, they tried a lot of different foods, very healthy foods. And healthy foods do kind of cleanse your body, but the pectin in the apple juice was number 1. They said it just pulled it right out.
So where's a huge source of pectin other than apple juice?
Where?
Canning for making jellies.
Oh, yeah.
It's pure pectin.
So just start eating pectin.
Well, you can mix it. You can mix it in water. You can mix the pectin in water and drink it. So, and that gives you a shot of pure pectin.
And I know that a lot of the health food stores and things like that have just direct pectin.
Yep.
So, that is a good source, and it may be something that will last longer even than apple juice. But maybe there's a great time to stock up on apple juice, or I don't even know if apple cider vinegar may be a potential.
I'm not sure about that, if it has pectin in it or not.
One thing I do want to say, though, guys, is you need to be doing some research now. Yes. And there's a ton of resources online. There's a ton of resources on YouTube, for that matter. One thing that I will recommend, and we're just now getting started, so I'm not ending it, but the Nuclear, Biological, and Chemical Survival Manual. This is put out by the U.S. Armed Forces. This is a great book. I also have one on surviving nuclear fallout, and I don't know where it is, a big green book. It's about like this. Very important information. I read through this. This is really good information, and it's very easy to understand. So that is just a great resource. And the thing too is, guys, is you need to have these things on hand and just put them in your library. It's better than having online sources or PDFs and all that are, relying on power. So, but let's talk about radiation sickness for just a minute.
And to go along with the book, grab a highlighter. When you start reading through it, grab a highlighter, and anything that you come across in there that's a nugget of knowledge, highlight it. That way it's easy to reference back to it. Put tabs in the book. That way it's easy to reference things in those books.
Right. Because when you're in a panic situation, it's good to have that stuff
and there's so much information in that book that you really need to have areas marked and referenced to make it easy to find.
Now, some of the things about radiation sickness, it causes cell damage. And then you have radiation burns. Then you have radiation sickness. Now, if you right up front start getting sick because your gut, your intestines are one of the first things that are affected, you're going to be in some trouble.
Yep.
That's one of the signs that things are not going well. Later on, cancer, your chances of getting a lot of different cancers definitely increase, including leukemia and different bone cancers and things like that. And so, we want to avoid these things as much as possible. But to be honest with you, again, is get inside, stay inside, and stay tuned. Now, with stay tuned, you need to have a radio. You need to have some weather radios, emergency radio.
Yep.
You know, your online may be out.
Yeah, the internet's going to be gone.
Yeah,
there's not going to be cell service. These things right here are going to be a brick. They're going to be absolutely useless. So a solar or a hand crank radio to where you can access the emergency broadcast channels, it's going to be really important to have one of those.
Right. And so, yeah, radios. And guys, I know we're in an age where radios are archaic a little bit, but having a survival type radio, we have a number of them. We keep hand cranks and solar and rechargeable batteries, and you can use regular batteries. So it gives us a lot of different options. But you want to know what's going on. And two, at the civil defense, they'll be putting out information constantly. And so hopefully you can kind of stay tuned. And two, know when it is safe to get out and to do things. And
I tell you, one of the best tools that I found with the internet right now is there's maps that you can download online that actually show the radiation path if a bomb was detonated on the West Coast, up and down the coast, in the middle of the country, where the radiation fallout areas would be based on the Gulf Stream. And it shows you. Like where we live, we're actually in probably one of the best places in the country to live as far as fallout goes, because we're right at the base of the mountains. So things tend to go either north of us or south of us. And as far as fallout goes, we're only in where you really have to shelter in place, depending on the size of the blast and the number of blasts. 1 or 2 days is about it for us. Now, there's other areas of the country that you're going to be sheltering in place for weeks or even months because of the radiation. So I definitely recommend looking online for radiation fallout maps. Just do a Google search for that and pull it up, and it's going to give you a lot of information.
Right. That's good. Yeah. But one thing that we realize, while we are in the safer areas for an actual military type bomb, we're in a bad area for nuclear meltdown.
Right.
We have, I think it's 32 miles from here. We have a nuclear power plant. There's one just south of us as well. And so there are maps that actually show that area, that's a safe area to be out of. And so those are just things just to get to know. Okay, let's go ahead and let's take some questions if you guys have some, and maybe we'll try to help out. We won't get to water yet. We'll do that in a minute.
Okay. FB Drivers Training Network asks, what's the Firestorm range?
It's according to the detonations, according to the megaton yield of the bomb.
That's right. And whether it's a ground blast or an airburst.
Yes.
But on average, you figure 1 to 10 miles is going to be your fire range.
Yeah, that's about what I was looking at, even with some of the larger bombs. Right. But then you have that concussion, that shockwave that comes out from that.
So, and then, also it depends on the terrain where you are. If it's flatland, that blast range could be quite a bit further. Mountainous areas where it's going to be blocked off by the mountains, the blast radius is going to be a lot smaller.
Well, that's like Hiroshima. They had mountains surrounding Hiroshima. So when the bomb went off, it didn't quite infect as big an area as they thought.
That's right.
Mr. Mike asked, how far outside of a blast zone will be safe?
Well, again, you're going to have the shockwave, which is going to do a lot of devastation. A lot of people die just from the debris the buildings collapsing and things like that. But really, once you get outside, probably that 10-mile range.
The 10-mile range outside of the immediate blast area, then your biggest concern is going to be a radiation fallout. And that's what longer term causes more problems than the blast itself. The blast itself is over in, like 10 seconds or so. But the long-term effects from the radiation fallout, and that's where I was talking about going back and looking at the maps and seeing where you are as far as where the fallout will land, is going to kind of give you a better idea and a better predictor of how long you're going to need to protect yourself.
And to give you an idea of the blast radius itself, it typically gets up to 6,000 degrees, which is the same temperature as the surface of the sun.
Right.
So there's a lot of third-degree burns and things like that people get that are just right outside the blast.
Jeremiah Mathis asks, can 3M half-face respirators with replaceable cartridges help within a nuclear event?
Well, when you look for filter systems, and there are a number of different ones that are actually specific for radiation, you need to look at that. There's information wherever you're buying the different filter systems, but they have them. In fact, I think I was looking at one 3M that had like a face shield here, then it has a filter system here. So yeah, I would look into that. One thing, years ago, we bought a bunch of surplus suits that were actually nuclear, and you could wash them off and do all that. There's some surplus stuff, but again, guys, this stuff's going to get gone in a hurry.
Yeah. Most of your surplus suits, they're going to be made out of activated charcoal. Right. For you guys that hunt, a lot of you use activated charcoal suits to keep your scent down. The military uses activated charcoal suits to help neutralize the radiation. As far as a half mask isn't really going to do a whole lot for you unless your whole head and everything is covered, because you're still going to absorb radiation through your scalp, through your skin, and everything that's exposed. So you really want some type of hood that's going to cover your entire head, as well as a respirator that's designed specifically for removing radiation particles.
Iberian Link Survival asks, what can besides lead protect you from the radiation?
Packed dirt. Again, there's different types of radiation, right. But for most of what we're talking about with just the fallout, concrete is a good one. Steel is a good one. But anything that you can get, even plastic, actually shields from a lot of the radiation, certain types of radiation.
Right.
So one of the first things I would do is, in fact, I told my wife today, which we have some plastic sheeting, but I said, go buy some rolls of plastic sheeting. And that way we can at least seal off certain areas.
And duct tape.
Yeah, duct tape, because it's not just the glass. It's also around the doors, because anything that can bring in air. Another thing you want to do immediately is turn off your HVAC.
Yep.
Because that pulls in air from outside. So immediately, that's the first thing you should do, is to shut that off. But getting underground is actually just the best.
It is. It absolutely is. Because you only need about 3.5 feet of dirt in between you and the surface that will stop 100% of the radiation.
Pete Pavia asks, what do you think is the average time you'd have to prepare if a missile launched before impact?
Yeah, that's just a Gordon.
Yeah.
Because it could be it could be a submarine.
Exactly. It really depends on where it's launched from. That's the big question. You could have anywhere from, 0 time to about 15 to 20 minutes is going to be your maximum amount of time that you're going to have an alert.
And two, when the government decides, when they do actually recognize that it is something, and to be able to get that alert out.
Stephanie asks, brick house is good then?
Brick is not bad. Brick is better than wood. It's better than vinyl siding or a wood house.
But you've still got the shingle roof with plywood. You've got a couple of layers there, but the layers are still pretty thin. So you are still going to get you're going to get radiation that's going to penetrate through the roof and down, seeping down through.
But just remember, 50% of the radiation is lost dropping.
Yep.
And once it hits, within 24 hours, 80% of the radiation is lost.
Yeah, being inside of any kind of shelter is better than being outside. But being inside something that has thicker walls is going to give you layered protection, more protection.
Yeah, I think the one thing, though, a lot of times people do get radiation poisoning, but then end up surviving through it.
Yeah.
The thing is mainly you're protecting yourself from radiation poisoning. But, you can still get sick and still make it through it. And that's why, there were 76% of the people in Nagasaki that actually survived it.
There's some scales online that talk about the is it Scovin? The amount of the millijoules of radiation that you can absorb and still survive it. And anything over about 5 or 6, you've got about a 90% chance of dying. Anything over 7, and it's 100% fatality.
And that's one of the things about having Geiger counters and understanding, because one of the things is, let's say it's your home and you have to get out.
Yeah.
Maybe you have a child that's, that just has to have medical attention, or maybe somebody's just super sick. You try to wait as long as you can, but there are possibilities. So having some kind of protection, like Robbie was talking about with the charcoal suits, different things like that with some of these. But again, these things are going to dry up. They're going to dry up.
Yep.
So what happens if a nuclear bomb hits Los Angeles? What cities nearby LA would be affected? I am in a city south of Los Angeles.
Well, I would look mainly, of course, being a high populated area could also be a target.
Yep.
I think that most of the targets are going to be military facilities first. And then, and I want to recommend this book. This book was written back in the 1950s, but it's Alas, Babylon. Number one, it is a great read. It's just a great read, period. It's one of my favorite survival type books. Even though when I first saw it said nuclear, I was kind of like, but this has been a few years ago. But man, I'm going to tell you, Alas, Babylon, great book. And that's what happens. They're down in Florida and everything around them gets just destroyed. And then it's their story of survival. It's a really good book.
Yeah. And like I was talking about, look online at the fallout maps and see where the radiation fallout is going to be compared to where you are. And that's going to give you an idea of, you want to be outside of the blast area, the blast radius, but you also want to try and minimize the amount of fallout or try and be out of the path of the fallout.
Thanks for answering his question because I didn't. Okay, we're going to take one more. We're going to get back to our list.
Kenneth Cox asked, what is the likelihood of something happening on U.S. soil? Also, would U.S. citizens be expected to fight back like Ukrainian civilians?
Of course. Now, the chances to me, I would see it happening possibly in Europe first. But on the other hand, it's according to what happens.
Yeah.
Listen, guys, we don't know what can happen. I mean, right now, Putin is under a major economic clampdown.
Yeah.
And that could lead to desperation. With desperation, who knows what could happen? And two, he knows that we're the number one defender of Europe, regardless of what they have. And so, it could be that kind of strike, could be a retaliatory strike. It's according to if we start shooting down Russian aircraft, which is in the tables, right? I mean, that's on the books right now. A possibility, maybe setting up missile, setups. Two, Ukraine was just accepted to NATO.
Mm-hmm. And they just applied to be in the EU.
Yeah,
European Union
they had
as well.
they'd already gotten all the stuff done.
Yep.
They were already ready to come over. And that's the reason why Putin came in. But now I saw this today. They said that the EU is pushing and NATO is pushing to go ahead and get them to be a member state.
Yeah.
If that happens, our chances of seeing some kind of nuclear exchange have increased. Now, to say that Putin's going to do it, he knows that they're going to get it right back. So, maybe, he'll keep his head on his shoulders, but it's just what we dealt with all through the Cold War.
Right.
It was that, will they not? Will they? So nobody knows. And two, I want to make sure that what I'm saying here is not a certainty.
Right.
What we're saying is, man, there are some things that you need to take into consideration that you really need to just put back.
Yeah. It's no different than, from the mid 50s all the way through the early 80s, there was a heightened chance of any type of nuclear battle happening. And that's kind of where we are right now. There's nothing that's a certainty with it. It's just, there is a heightened chance that something like this could happen. And to be able to be prepared is going to help take a lot of stress and worry off of you, because you do understand it more. You understand more about the nuclear blast, the nuclear fallout, what you need to do to protect yourself. Especially the times, what kind of time you need to stay inside, how long you need to stay inside, what to do once you go outside. Those are all things that, doing some research on this is really going to help you to have a little more peace about it. If you're in the middle of if it happens and you're in the middle of a blast radius, it's not going to matter. But I'm just being honest. It's not going to matter. You're going to be a shadow on the wall somewhere.
Know it. Yeah.
But for everyone that's outside of the blast radius, which is going to be the majority of the people in the country, you really need to know what you need to do to protect yourself and to be able to survive long term after the blast.
Right.
And that's kind of what we're talking about today.
And if you're thinking about a Russian invasion, you need to read Going Home series, because that's what happens in the Going Home series. Is they do have a Russian invasion once the U.S. kind of. Okay, now let's switch gears here a little bit. We're going to talk about, and this is one thing. My wife, she was with a big group yesterday for homeschool. They do homeschool, and there was a lot of questions about growing food. And we're going to talk about water as well. But first, we're going to go ahead and talk about food. One of the things in long term is growing food. What do? okay, the ground has fallout on it. There's radiation. One of the first things you need to do is to remove the topsoil. And that's about 5 to 10 inches of soil. And if you can remove that and put that somewhere else, making sure that you're fully protected when you're dealing with that dirt, but get that somewhere else, then, you can grow plants, you can grow vegetables, you can grow things, because in a long-term situation, that may be something you have to consider. So just think about that. Make sure that you get rid of that soil, that topsoil. Also, you've got animals that are out there. Those animals are contaminated. You can't take a chance. And so you just have to be careful that once things start to happen. 2, when you do have different type indicators like Geiger counters and things like that, you can test the food. So one of the things about Fukushima is they're growing food there, but they come in these markets and they'll test it with the individual testers to see where it is.
And if you do have to eat an animal, you want to skin it first. Don't eat the skin. Skin it first, because that's going to have a higher layer of radiation in it. Skin it, remove the skin. Don't eat any of the meat immediately surrounding the bones, because bones and bone marrow absorb radiation. So you don't want to eat the meat that's immediately surrounding the bone as well. So your large meaty areas away from your bone mass, those are the areas that you want to take the meat from.
Right. And 2, canned food is typically safe.
Yep.
Food that's packaged, especially in plastic and things, those foods can be safe. You just want to make sure they're not out and exposed to certain areas. Right. Like if you have a pantry, that's going to be relatively safer than food that's sitting out. Food in your refrigerator actually is going to be good. So you do have food sources, that's not going to be just contaminated. It's not like a bomb's going to go off, fallout's going to happen, and you're just going to be sitting there and there's nothing. Okay, now let's go to bottled water. Having bottled water is a key element in this. Right. Now, you can actually put the water in a Berkey, but the problem is it contaminates the inside of the tank then and your filters, even though it should filter a lot of the radiation out. But so you want to, have bottled water, and 2, you can have filters to go on to your filters that take out radiation. These are radiation filters. I bought these couple of years ago. In fact, when I was planning to do this, and there's a number of different type filters. In fact, a lot of the companies that put out filter systems have attachments to take out radiation. And so you want to go ahead and stock up on some of these type things that'll take out radiation immediately. And really, you want to have a few of these. I bought a bunch of these, and I've got a bunch of them laying here, but there's a lot of systems out there. I know Indoor also has one. There's a number of different companies. You can get online and you can find those filter systems. That doesn't filter your water, though. It doesn't filter the Giardia and cryptosporidium. Of course, probably it kills it anyway. It kills all that beforehand, so maybe it does. But one of the things that's funny is irradiated food is not dangerous. In fact, most of your vegetables are irradiated. When it's coming through production, they irradiate it. They actually apply this radiation to them to kill E. coli and different type botulisms and different type insects. But so the food is not radioactive just because it's been irradiated. But radioactive food that's had fallout or had some kind of gamma rays or something through it can be radioactive. So you just need to be careful. But again, food that you have, your long-term food storage, typically is going to be fine.
That's right.
It's going to be fine. So
as long as it's not exposed to radiation.
Right. You don't want to expose to radiation. So gardens, things like that. Okay, let's go to a few more questions. And then we do have more to talk about. What we wanted to do today was mainly get through some just basics of getting you to a place. Again, get inside, stay inside, and stay informed or stay tuned. Yep. And those are the big things. Again, 15 minutes, you have 15 minutes once that explosion happens to get in shelter.
I'll tell you one thing that I found that was interesting. I was doing a little bit of research online today and went to the CDC's website, and the CDC has actually updated all of their information about nuclear blast within the last few weeks.
Wow. Yep. Yeah. Well, I mean, we're seeing a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
It's funny though, even before this happened with Ukraine, there was a number of different experts in the field that have been coming out saying, guys, the potential for nuclear war right now is higher than it's ever been.
Yep.
One of the things, too, that you need to also consider is not just Russia, but also these rogue nations. You've got Iran building up their nuclear systems. And so there are some potential threats out there. Of course, Korea has been already a threat for a while. And we have China. These are nuclear powers. And so these are different threats. So it's not just this Russian thing, but I think that's really brought it to the forefront.
Yeah, it has. Absolutely.
Okay, we got some questions.
Angela asks, if your thyroid has been completely removed, do you still take the potassium iodide?
That's a good question.
I would. It's not going to hurt anything.
Yeah, and you want to check to make sure that you don't have any kind of allergies toward potassium iodide. Again, it is iodide, not. And two, they usually have it to where it's marketed or packaged toward, this kind of thing.
Right.
Liz asked, links for a Geiger counter.
Yeah, we'll have to put those down there in the bottom. Most of these, like this one, let's see. In fact, a good buddy of mine did a lot of research. This is a nuclear radiation detector. It's GQ, and it's the GMC 320. Thank you.
You're welcome.
GMC 320. And this is one of those. Oh, I've got an isotope. It's a low radiation isotope you can test them with. There is a company. In fact, I got this on eBay, and I've been meaning. I really got it for fun, but I got it back in the late 80s. Bill Clinton kind of just dismantled the civil nuclear defense protocols and everything, and a lot of these went on sale. Now, most of these need to be calibrated. There is a company that calibrates these, and I don't have the name of it, but in fact, it's the one company that does it. And I'm sure they're probably they're probably inundated with orders now.
I'll have about later this afternoon. I'll have links to all of this stuff on my Amazon store as well. So you can just search for Robbie Wheaton on Amazon, and I'll have all of this listed on there on our Amazon store.
Patriot Fever 1776 asks, Sootch mentioned power. How can we prepare for an EM pulse besides a Faraday
shield?
Cage?
Yep.
I am thinking radios or even cars.
Yeah, there's certain parts of your car, certain years, that are early that aren't so dependent on power.
If it's an older car that runs on points, totally unaffected. Your older stuff that runs on points, it won't be affected by any kind of EMP blast. It's all of your newer cars that have the electronics and computers where you run into the issues. One of the things that I've read that seems to have a pretty good chance of actually saving your vehicle is using survival blankets and putting a barrier and a layer in between the survival blanket and your vehicle. It looks like there's a good chance that can protect your vehicle.
The one thing about, especially an EMP, is the way the waves move and the size of the waves. And it's one of the reasons why a Faraday cage works is because of the mesh. Typically, it doesn't allow those waves to get through. And listen, this is the one thing, though, guys, is all of this, not necessarily what we've been talking about so far, but a lot of the EMP is theory.
They
don't really know. They don't really know that things are going to, even with a solar flare, that has done some damage in the 1800s. It burned up a bunch of telegraph lines. So, they've done a lot of testing and they've tried to harden a lot of things. There are some things out there. The Faraday bags, I've got a number of those where I can put my electronics in them. But building a Faraday cage, some people have even tested galvanized trash cans and have put stuff in there and done some testing, but it's still just theory.
Yep.
And until something actually happens. And that's one of the things about it with a nuclear detonation high in the atmosphere, that could cause a major EMP. And that may be something that Russia does faster than they would do an actual nuclear weapon, as far as targeted weapon. The good thing about the EMP is that we don't have the radiation to have to deal with. But the bad part about the EMP is it's going to disable all of our infrastructure. And then things can get really ugly.
House of Lamar asks, is there any specific brand of potassium iodide we need to buy for radiation?
I would do some research, but this is Iostat. This is what we've gotten. And, but I'm sure that the CDC and FEMA and some of those may have a recommendation for certain things you need to look for.
Actually, what it says on the CDC's website, I read it earlier today, The CDC's website says don't go out and buy potassium iodide. I know. I feel the same way about it. Don't go out and buy it. If there's a blast, we'll distribute it.
Yeah, give me a break. Just like those vaccines. Yeah, I don't think so.
That was what they had listed.
Of course they did. They're retarded.
Don't go out and buy it. We'll distribute it if it's needed.
Okay. So the CDC says one thing. I'm telling you right now, get you some of this stuff and have some for you and your family.
When disaster strikes,
don't listen to the CDC.
Wow. You've got seconds to spare. They're only minutes away.
Yeah, hours, days, years.
Nigel says, does anyone make a prepper kit with all the things that you need in one place?
I don't know. I haven't done any research on it. I know that the guys that do a lot of this kind of stuff, they have a whole kit. It's about $900. It's not just for this. This is about $300, $300 or so, and they go up to about $400. But these run very reasonable. They're like in the $50, whatever. Yeah. I think this is a great. Plus, this is something that's current technology. That's a little bit old school. But yeah, I don't know of a kit particularly, but I can tell you that as long as they can get supplies, there will be kits showing up.
Yep.
Mr. Landfill asked, after it is safe to go out, is it best to have a radiation dosimeter? You need to know how much you've been exposed to.
Absolutely. I wouldn't, if something like this happens, I would not go anywhere without one of these on me.
Right. And then they do have cards you can get that tell you about different radiation levels. There is a low meter that'll get low radiation levels, and then there's the high meter. High meter is more for immediate, we need to get the crap out of here. Low meter is let's check and see our general area after the blast, after some time. So, there are some different type Geiger counters that, that pick up different type radiation strengths.
YW asks, how much potassium iodide does one need to take to prevent radiation injury?
Well, they say to take one in the first 24 hours. And I guess after that, but again, after 48 hours, it should be down to a 99% drop in radiation. So, I would say have 3, 4 at the most pills for each person, and you should be fine. Because once you take the iodide, you take it, it's going to fill your thyroid. Taking another one's not going to do anything. It's just going to pass through you. So you're wasting it. So one every 24 hours until the danger is gone. And again, elderly, pregnant, children, there are some differences, and you just need to do some research on that.
Prepper 101 asks, what would be the best method or technique to keep my mother-in-law inside the blast zone?
I'll defer to you on that one.
Yeah, I'm good. When you hear something really going, send her to Fort Bragg, Fayetteville, North Carolina.
If you have a rain collection set up outside, would that be safe or retract after a blast?
Yeah, it's going to be contaminated.
Yeah.
Any surface water is going to be contaminated. Your best bet for clean water at that point is going to be from a deep well or a covered well. Any surface water is going to be contaminated.
Yeah, a well is a good source. A well would be one of your better sources. If it's a pond or you have water, you're going to have that radiation on top. It's going to settle to the bottom. If you have to have water, you can't do any other. You've just got to have water because you only live 3 days without water. Then, maybe you go down into the middle of the water and try to pull some out initially. But then again, there you are right there exposed.
Yep. And that's where you still need some water filters that are made specifically for removing radiation from the water.
Heather Green asks, how realistic, though, is a nuclear attack with the principle of MAD? My great-grands didn't even bother making a bunker.
Well, the nuclear threat, for a long time was something everybody lived with. And a lot of people built nuclear shelters and bomb shelters and all that stuff. I've seen them around every once in a while. You'll come across one, a lot of them are used now for root cellars. But nobody knows the future. Obviously, our military and our government doesn't know what could possibly happen, but they are starting to ramp things up. And with the threat of Putin right now, and it's just like this: you back an animal into a corner, and you're going to get it. And so, we're kind of backing him into a corner right now. He's already upped the nuclear preparedness level there in Russia. There are other countries that are kind of joining him. There are countries that are joining us or trying to support the Ukraine. And it's just a volatile situation. Yeah. What are the chances? Who knows? But the big thing that we're really kind of getting to here is go ahead and get yourself prepared a point. I mean, go ahead and understand that you need to get inside. Understand that you don't want to look at that blast when it goes off, that you want to get behind shelter. Because again, like Robbie said, it's going 600 miles an hour, that blast. So you getting behind something. In fact, I think it was Nagasaki. The police there, they didn't lose one policeman because when the blast hit, they all knew to get behind a barrier, and that saved their lives. Now, a lot of them maybe died of cancer or they got burned and things like that, but it saved them from that initial blast. So these are the kind of things that we really want to kind of talk about today, in which we want to get across, is know these few basic things that just up your chances of survival. No one can know the future, but having a few things set aside. I mean, right here with the filters, with the Geiger counter, with the potassium, with some good books on it, especially good credible books by the U.S. military. You can spend less than $100, maybe $200, and then you can just put it aside. Then if you want to go into protective gear and gas mask and respirators and all that, you can
go as far down the rabbit hole as you want to go, but at the very least, start with what we're talking about today. Build your knowledge base on nuclear war, what it does, and what you need to do to give yourself the best possible chance to survive it.
Right. That's exactly right.
Kaylin asks, your opinion on the Grail water bottle, overpriced or worth the $99?
I like the Grail. It's an excellent system. And I love that it's a container and it's a filter and it just pushes down. It's a great system. I also have some of the Berkey sport bottles, which are just the container with the Berkey filter inside. And then you just have a straw and it sucks the water up through the filter if you want to, whatever you want to drink. There's a number of different, the indoor filter systems are good. And then also if you want something small, like for my get home bags and things like that, I like the Aquamira Frontier straws, especially the Pro. It's a little bit bigger and it'll filter like 30 gallons of water. Those are great systems. But when it comes to nuclear, you've got to filter that through a radiation filter.
Yep.
So just remember that. But not that the question was like that. But I really like the Grail system. I think it's worth it. It's definitely an easy way to carry water as well.
FB Drivers Training Network asks, question, could you use liquid Flex Seal to coat canvas to protect against fall exposure?
It's going to protect you from the fallout, but not from the gamma rays. The gamma rays are what penetrates the deepest. And that's where you just have to have dense layers of material to prevent the gamma rays from penetrating.
What about the charcoal?
Charcoal is an exception. Charcoal actually absorbs the gamma rays. And that's why activated charcoal is used in those suits, because it absorbs the gamma rays.
Right. So that may be an option if you can find something out there like that.
Daniel Don asks, do you trust water purifier or is a water filter necessary?
Water filter is your best bet, like a actual dedicated, nuclear or radiated filter system. Right. Like with the big Berkey, I mean, there are some theories that you could actually bring that through, and the system that's charcoal is those systems. Right. So, it could possibly take it out, but the problem is you're going to irradiate
the inside of the container.
Right. And so then you're going to have radiation inside your container. It's metal and it'll store that radiation a lot longer. So I wouldn't want to use it if I had to, and I had no water and I had no other choice. That's one thing, but that's the thing about this. It gives you some choices. And so when you're doing things and you say, well, I've got to get outside, we'll know the dangers.
That's right.
And again, guys, you need to do the research.
And this is to get you thinking, what do I need to do? What if, how am I going to get water? How am I going to filter my water? What am I going to do with my food? Where do I need to be in case of a blast? What's going to give me the best possible chance of surviving a blast? And these are all just items. It's really just to get you thinking. So you so you're preparing yourself and understand what you need to do to protect yourself.
Okay.
Jason Roth asked, do we still go inside if the blast is over 1,000 miles away or on the other side of the country?
It's like Robbie said, go to that website, see where the fallout is going, see what it's doing.
Yeah, look at the fallout map. If you go to Google and just Google radiation fallout map, it's going to pull up a bunch of different maps that show where and how the radiation is going to move across our country. And that's what you really need to know. Even though you're 1,000 miles away, if you're like right in the middle of the Gulf Stream, which moves from like the west coast to the east coast in kind of an arc like this across the Midwestern states, if you're right in the middle of that, you could still get a huge dose of radiation there from the fallout, versus being, in the mountains where everything gets pushed either north or south of you. You have a much lower chance of being irradiated.
But one thing I do want to mention, when Chernobyl had the meltdown in Finland, even today, they still they check their animals because it shows up every once in a while, dangerous levels of radiation. And Finland's a good distance from Ukraine. And so, there are some situations that are long-term that you need to consider. But, the thing is, again, guys, is it's one of those things that, getting the knowledge now, doing your research. I'm telling you, there is a ton of information on YouTube, just on YouTube.
Yep.
But then you've got other information. You've got credible information. A lot of the guys on YouTube, though, will say, we're not experts. And Robbie and I are not experts. We're not claiming to be experts. We're just trying to give you what we have been researching, what we see, some things that we have studied. And, of course, Robbie actually probably is a little more hands-on expert because of his background. But even then, a lot of this stuff is theory.
Yeah,
it is.
And that's the thing, like with an EMP attack, EMPs are almost 100% theoretical. They really don't know what the end result would be from it. Would it wipe out all of the electronics across the country? If it was an atmospheric blast, how far would it wipe stuff out? I mean, could the blast, be carried through the Gulf Stream and wipe out an entire country and basically just wrap all the way around the earth and wipe out all the electronics worldwide off of one blast? Nobody really knows. So the EMPs are one of the huge unknowns. The isobaric and thermobaric bombs they're a little more predictable because we have a lot more data on those with what they do, what they can do, as well as how to survive those.
But, guys, the number one thing is the same things that you're doing for your preps, you need to be doing toward this.
Yep.
Having your food set back, having some water put back, having medical supplies put back. But this takes it up a little bit more. It definitely takes it up a couple of notches. Get your potassium iodide. I would highly recommend getting some apple juice and letting Pectin take care of some of the things, or get regular Pectin.
That's right.
Get some Geiger counters, again, some radiation detectors. That'll allow you to be able to at least have something to use if you have to go outside. You'll have some ideas. Having some water filtration systems, those are great. Going in and getting a Geiger counter like this, that's a high expense. But, and buying a nice sign here to invite all your neighbors over to your house, I don't know about that. That's why this is inside and not outside. But, guys, as this thing progresses, here's the thing. Our whole theme with this YouTube channel is sensible prepper. And so while I'm not telling you to go out and build a giant bunker and get down there and live in it, I am saying that there are things that you can do on a sensible level to mitigate odds against your survival. And that's the big thing. So we really appreciate all the questions, a lot of good questions. Guys, I have a lot of questions, to be honest with you. I know, we all do. But, having a few things set aside will help you with your peace of mind, and it will give you an idea when that happens, if it happens, which is a high probability that it's not going to happen. I mean, let's just face it. But if it does happen, that these are a few things that you can do to just give your survival a better chance. And, years ago, Soldier of Fortune had an article one time, and it said, and they did this worldwide experts. They take all these worldwide experts from all over the world. And they said, if you can live 48 hours in a catastrophic situation, that your chances of survival dramatically increase. And so getting you through that first 48 hours is vital. then you got other problems to deal with. You just got to face them when you get there. So we really appreciate Robbie for being here today. As always, he's a big asset for us, and we love him to, just to be here, and has a lot of different, you are a big ass, by the way,
Yeah.
but, have a big, we really appreciate his information, his knowledge, the way he sees things. It just brings a lot to what we do. Also check out Wheaton Arms, his website, and check out Wheaton Arms YouTube channel. He's got some great videos over there. So,
and a lot more coming.
Yeah, a lot more coming. And we really appreciate Sarah Mack for monitoring the questions and keeping Robbie and I in line. And so today was a little bit, it's a little bit of a bummer, but that doesn't, just because you stick your head in the sand doesn't mean you're going to get a nuclear blast at your rear end.
Right.
And we also appreciate Sportsman's Guide. And guys, again, you get $20 off every $100 or more purchase using Sootch. There's a lot of surplus stuff over there. They get a lot in. And so it's a great resource. I use that code all the time.
I'll be using it this afternoon.
And their Buyers Club.
Yeah, make sure you check out their Buyers Club. The Buyers Club, you get additional savings as well as free shipping on a lot of their items.
Yeah, they're great to deal with. So, guys, we're going to sign off. Be strong. Be of good courage. God bless America. Long live the Republic.